The reason that I played the tune was just to kind of share with you a little bit of my midlife crisis. Now that we've gone past that, we can get back into the presentation. But on a serious note about that very same song, by the way, I heard it for the first time last week, so anybody who's known it longer than that, please don't show me off. And the reason that I found it intriguing is that in this community that we're talking about, there is a notion of champagne lifestyle where people are really into bling bling and all those sort of extravagant display stuff. And this guy came up with this song, which kind of took a very anti-establishment twist, where he goes back to romanticizing the old 740 milliliter bottle of beer in the township. And this has taken off, people love it. And it just kind of shows you that there is such a difference in the cultures that exist in this community that we're talking about. So really what it is about is, what I want to share with you is, this particular market. And I can go back to the next slide, thank you. You don't want to see each other the whole time. Is that while they have this champagne lifestyle, and this comes from, it's not research, so I'm not going to throw you statistics on this particular part, but there are parts where I'll share stats with you, is that you're finding that on weekends, a group of guys, maybe with some girls, whatever it happens, will go to Mzoli's, will go to Sakumzi in Soweto, or they'll go to in Tembisa. There's a couple of places there where they will sit and they might even spend on a single meal up to 4,000 or 5,000 rands just on food and alcohol between 4 or 5 people. And then you tell me they can't afford to travel. Now, all I'm saying here is that that's the beginning of the conversation. So let's just park that thought and just keep it at the back of your head as we progress. The second part is when you drive from the airport and you look at some of the townships which are quite poor, how many dishes do you see for DSTV? Now, I ask myself the question that if DSTV can do it and even produce a product that you can pay for, what is it, 400 rand a month or 500? 700 for the compact.
No, okay.
I don't know. I mean, there's a compact that I bought for my mother, I forgot how much it is, but it actually plays the Nigerian movies and a lot of gospel music, and that's all they need for now. So they can do that, and we actually can sell them travel again. So I think let's just proceed. Where's the thing to change this stuff? Is this?
That's the thing.
That's the thing.
What must I press? Black people and technology. Yeah. This one forward, this one backwards. I don't know, but it's fine. We'll try. I'm going to shoot to show. So effectively, who is this market? I think we're trying to find defining this market. I think let me go back one slide so I can just talk a little bit more. I think the first thing that I want to just challenge us on is to talk about the language that we use when we talk about this market. We call it the emerging market, the emergent market, the black diamonds. How would you feel if somebody would call you that you're emerging? I mean, it sounds for me a little bit condescending about the particular market that you want to sell to. We call them black diamonds. I don't know what a black diamond looks like, but I'll take it as a good word, and it's supposed to be, I suppose, to give them some praise. For the purpose of today, if you'd allow me, I would like to use a different term. And that term is going to be called the Afropolitan. And I'll tell you what the Afropolitan is later on. It's a terminology that we've used in one of the stations that I look after in my day job when I'm not speaking here. And I think that terminology has allowed us really to do a number of things, to really kind of drill deeper into this market, to understand who they are, and to actually get a relationship with them. I'll come back to this particular point a bit later. The truth of the matter, I think, is that when it comes to traveling, we're finding that the people that we're talking about, they're a large group of people, but they are not homogeneous. And I played that song at the beginning because exactly that. Even with the youth market, you're sort of 18 to 25. There are people who will hate that song simply because it's black. And there are certain people who will hate that song simply because it's not R&B. And there are others who will hate it for other reasons. And I think we need to recognize that when we talk to these various markets, we're talking to different people who have got different interests. Now, when it comes to certain stats, and here I'm going to steal some of the thunder from South African tourism. I think we spend a little bit of time with them just to kind of get them to share with us what their experiences are in this particular space. But I think one of the things that we get is that, well, we do know that there's 54 million of us in this country. And I think there's about 34.7 over 18 people who live in this country. I'm not sure if we include our neighbors Mozambique and Zimbabwe in that number, but we can talk about that some other time. Of those, there are 21.7 adults with a source of income. There's method in my methods, just bear with me. And as you proceed, there's 3.16 who earn above 5 million rands a month.
5 million?
Hey, that's a fair number to take friends.
They're showing me still awake.
But yeah, well done, that's your way. 5,000 rands, and that's personal income, by the way. So I think that's an important issue. If I can just save myself from you guys. And 1.5 million of those already travel. But what we actually know is that they don't travel for holidays, they travel for work and other reasons. And of that number, again, only 0.3 million of those travel for holiday purposes. Now, do you see how that number starts? And it just dwindles down and down and down and down. The challenge really here is to get the 1.2 million that I indicated earlier on, who are currently traveling around the country, but for other purposes than holiday, to actually spend time with our attractions, our accommodations, and those sort of places. Because the majority of them travel for a whole lot of reasons, be it medical reasons, be it visiting friends and family. So whatever the reason is, I think there is a challenge to all of us in this room to begin to talk to that market and convert them and make sure that they travel. I'm going to take these stats from South African tourism and then almost, I mustn't forget this particular part. I've stolen this concept at the bottom there of building, converting, and defending, which is a South African tourism sort of strategy of how to deal with the domestic market. I think it's a great tool that if we were to find a way of harnessing it, it just allows us to focus on which markets need what sort of messaging. Because on the building side, you've got to get the people excited about travel. On the converting side, you've got to get them to convert from being travelers for business into travelers for holiday. And then on the defending side, you actually have got to defend those who are traveling to get them to travel more. So that's basically is the thinking behind that particular point. And then we get into my favorite, the Afropolitan. Now you probably ask me, what is the Afropolitan? I think, and where do I get the Afropolitan? Has any of you guys heard about a radio station in Johannesburg called K.I.T? I happen to work there at certain times. No, I am not Bob Mabena, I am Jerry Mabena. And Bob and I are not related, even though he tells people he's my cousin. Who is the Afropolitan? I think that's a question that I would like us to just focus a little bit on and try and get a sense of what makes the Afropolitan, and what are the things that we can actually begin to decipher out of that. Now, the difference between the SAT research and this Afropolitan conversation is that the Afropolitan discussion, unfortunately, is done by a small radio station, and we don't have the big budgets that allows us to do your deep dive studies and really get into the statistics. But what you have is that it's a generation of South Africans, I think, who can be described as creative, very politically aware, and in many cases quite multicultural in their lookout, very accommodative, very explorative. And within the K.I.T environment, we have found that they are willing to learn. I think it's a market that actually is almost saying, if I have a relationship with you, if I can trust you, I'm willing to kind of receive information from you. And I think that's basically is going to be the start of the discussion with them. One can also argue that they actually straddle two or more distinct cultures and identities, almost kind of existing in a world that what we might call a traditional African world, but also a modern world. And I'll share with you one or two stories that we've learned in the past, which are quite eye-opening for us as we do work there. I'm going to take a couple of minutes and just kind of share with you some of the interviews that we conducted with certain of these Afropolitans, just to get you a sense of what are they saying about themselves. If we can just go through those, Mr. DJ.
My name is Spiwe Mpia. I am a writer, editor, and consultant. I think we've heard enough about the problems that are facing Africa. And there's so many interesting and inspiring stories coming out of Africa that are being undertold. We are going to go past the stage where South Africa sells itself. It speaks to being self-assured, it means being informed, it means knowing your story, it means standing proud. We need to carry that truth in everything that we do.
I am Fiona Okunu, that's my name. I am a sister, a friend, a daughter, and a change maker. I am an editor for an online magazine called AfriPopMag, and the URL for that is www.afripopmag.com. What it is it's a place for global African culture. So it's for people that are African-minded or African-rooted, but have a global definition of their identity. So whether you live in LA, whether you live in Paris, whether you live in Nairobi, your culture says that you're African, but your experience and your perspective gives you so much more than just what your passport and what geography says that you are.
People know me as Timothy Maurice, or know me as Timothy Maurice Webster. I think at my core, I'm a thinker. One of the things that I believe is required from an Afropolitan nowadays is that we must be curious about the world and our role in the world. I feel like at our basic, most fundamental level, we need to be asking hard questions about our reality. After 500-600 years of oppression, we're now in a space that we're free, but what are we free for? There's a huge responsibility for people like myself and anyone, any manager, any person who leads, or anyone who has a voice to ask better questions. And I think at my core, I ask a lot of questions, even when I don't know the answers. And from thinking, I then decide to create things. And I love thinking and creating. At my deepest core, it's what wakes me up in the morning.
Thank you. What we have done further was to also segment those markets, just to really begin to get a bit of a deeper understanding of the various groups and how they behave and how they respond. The first group would be the what you call the forerunners, and then we have the born affluents, then you've got the shapeshifters, and then you've got the K.I.T certified. I mean, these are just the groups that we use for ourselves internally, just to understand the market that we're communicating with. But what has been very interesting was, I did a little exercise, which I have not completed, unfortunately, for this session, was to take the SAT understanding of the domestic market and then superimpose on it this particular market. And you find quite an interesting commonalities in terms of particularly the age profile, the income profile, and how it then translates into the psychography of how they respond, either to media or to messaging or the things that they like to do. So you're beginning to see that if we actually spend a bit more time, there's a richness of data, but that needs a lot of work to be able to be unearthed over time. Now let me just get a bit deeper into the various groups that we're referring to. I'm going to start with the forerunners, but let me just kind of put all the slides up. The forerunners, it's a particular group that has lived through apartheid. I think these are people like myself. Some even fought the struggle. I struggled to find the struggle, but that's another issue. So we qualified in education before 1994. So when the transition came, we were the first generation that kind of almost eased into it. No, I didn't make the BEE deals. I don't know how to explain that to my son, but we'll deal with it. And some of us might have been freedom fighters, but later on they kind of went, either became BEE moguls, or they went into civil service, or some into business. Then there's another group called the born affluents, who effectively are almost like the second or third generation, but they're likely to be the children of the forerunners. And they got very good schooling most of the time, because their parents would have had a bit of education, managed to get them to some good schools, sometimes even decent Model C schools. Some of them might have even studied overseas. And to a large extent, these groups are driven by the need to define themselves as their own person. I think there is a need for them to kind of find a way of expressing their personas in what they do and how they express their work in the environment. Shapeshifters, highly driven by the need to succeed, slightly younger group, and they're out to make something of themselves. These are the go-getters, and they believe in being necessary in order to do what one wants. They are social chameleons. They may need to work and play in different social circles, And you're finding a lot of them beginning to say that I want to do the work that I enjoy to do when I want to do it. And when I want to rest and I want to do all the things that I want to do, I want to be able to have the time. I don't know, there's a term that they use for people who work when they want to work and they don't work. I have 2 children, so I can't even qualify for that one. The last group, which I find absolutely fascinating, is the K.I.T certified group. Now, this particular group, they have the wealth, but they still choose to live in the townships. I mean, it's not as if they cannot afford to buy a house in Bryanston, or in the case of Cape Town, in Kenilworth, or any of the affluent suburbs. But they live in those townships because they want to. And they live in there because they actually enjoy that lifestyle and that social cohesion that one can call that they found in that particular place. And they also disdain, or they detest rather, the ostentatious nature of life of those who live in the suburbs. So, having said that, I think what you then begin to find in terms of the segments, I'm just going to scroll again on this one so that when you have all the things, I think it's easier to talk to it. When you look at the forerunners in terms of life stage, I mean, generally they are 45 plus. I've just given away my age. They are mature singles. Unfortunately, I'm not, but that's not to be regretted. The media consumption, by and large, traditional media, newspapers, television, radio. They do like social or believe in social or online media, but they actually do believe that it's for the younger ones. They don't want to be seen to be on Instagram most of the time and those sort of things. The touch points in terms of where you find them, how you communicate to them, I think you find them on traditional media. But these are the groups that, even though they are educated and successful, but they still belong to Stokvels. They'll still go to building societies. And I mean, I always find a beautiful picture on a Sunday. If you drive around Branson, when you see, I don't know how many of you know, Abu Mama Sambat, the Mothers Union Mothers. I mean, there's one who came out of Range Rover the other day in her red and white Methodist regalia, and I thought, that's beautiful. Because oftentimes we think that that's for the older people who are poor and in the townships. But to have somebody in Branson come out of a Range Rover in a Methodist church in that regard, it was kind of, okay, there's something we need to understand here. Things have changed. And take the ZCC. People think the ZCC is a church for poor people. Try go to Maria during the Easter and see some of the members of the church. I think a lot of things have changed, and I think we got left behind. I think the train has actually left the station, and we're still wondering which way it went. The born affluence, the lifestyle generally is about 24 to 40, mostly at-home singles. Once again, the media consumption still remains somewhat traditional. But I think there is an emergence of digital media that's beginning to creep in that particular market. And the touch points, once again, as I said, is of the digital media. But the events is a big part of that whole thing. These are the kind of guys that will get a group of people, and the 10, 15, 20 people will go down to the Devon July just to hang out. And I'll talk about what we do with them. I mean, we brought some of them to the Cape Town International Jazz. We almost filled up a Mango aircraft from Lanseria to Cape Town, and we put them at the Table Bay. Now that's not cheap. That's a 12,000 rands per person trip on a weekend. And we say they can't afford to travel. So I asked myself, is it about them not affording, or is it about us having a certain type of relationship which we don't have? Furthermore, the shapeshifters, I think once again they're very similar in group to the born affluence. But here I think it's about lifestyle. I mean, as I said to you earlier on, is that they want to do what they want to do when they want to do it. So you need to kind of tailor whatever it is that you do around them. I think we spoke a little bit about eventing earlier on and the role that it plays, and this is where those kind of things come in. These are the guys that will come here for the 94.7, the Cape August, and we'll do a race like that. They'll come here for the jazz, they'll come here for the big events that you have. They'll come here for the attractions to the extent that you do stuff that attracts them, that excites them. The K.I.T certified is a fascinating group because it straddles all the groups. I mean, it starts 45 plus, 25, 24 to 40, and even younger at times. I mean, you're getting some young, successful guys still living in the townships. They tend to have a very strong sense of self, and they're not easily excited by the mainstream trend. But I think in here, it's about how do you bring them into a collective of single-minded people that actually are like them. And if you take them into that particular space, they feel more comfortable. And language here is also quite a big part of the conversation. And as we look at these things, I think we are developing further insights. And what those insights are beginning to tell us is that family and community is central in this instance. Learning is key. I think they are willing to learn, they are willing to explore. In the sense of both the formal learning, but also learning through experience, finding their roots or exploring new cultures, widening horizons. And success is quite a big part of their life. And however they define it, does not have to be material success. It's really being comfortable in what I'm doing, where I'm doing it, and how I express that particular success in my own way. They see the world as they want to see it with their friends and with their family. So traveling groups is a big part again. I was in Mpumalanga last year in December with the family. And it was intriguing that we were traveling as a family of 4. And every other person, and 90% of the people that were in God's window were black. And all of them were like either in a combi, in a bus, or in a convoy of 10 cars. But you can tell that these people are all traveling in groups. And it was fascinating to see that now how do you begin to communicate with this market in terms of sending them holidays and actually getting them to come to an attraction. And when they get there, how do you begin to engage them? I was again at the Drakensberg sometime last year. And just before my son and I did one of those zip line things and those sort of things. By the way, I did go on your first thing at Abu Dhabi. I am one of the stupid ones.
Big up to you.
But I think what I found intriguing was that just as we were doing the zipline thing and those sort of tree hopping adventure things, literally a group of 25 to 30-year-olds came in probably about 5 different cars. And they just descended on this place. What I found interesting, just really stepping back and observing, was because of group pressure, it was more likely for them to try a lot of the activities because one of them dares the other one, says, yeah, I'm going to do it, will you do it? And then, I mean, there's some ladies there, so the man wants to show that they're So, all I'm saying is that let's understand those sort of dynamics and let's create those spaces for them in our environment. I did speak a little bit about the events being a tool to encourage travel. Now, black people in water, so that's another interesting point. I do have a friend of mine who I will not embarrass who did the Meet My Mile, and we were all shocked that she's black. So, I want to talk a little bit about this, but about 5 years ago, a friend of mine and I, we have a little business that we've been running, I don't know for how long, but I wanted to have a floating party. And I wanted to do one in Mozambique, but we couldn't do a proper floating party with a stage in the water. So we decided the other best thing was to actually float a party on the boat. So we took one of these MSC cruises, and we took DJ Fresh, who's now subsequently gone and betrayed us and went to Cape Town, but we won't hold it against him. And we did a thing called Rock the Boat. When we started with Rock the Boat, we sold, I mean, this thing takes, what, 3,000 people around there? We sold about 80% of the tickets on that boat in less than 24 hours. But what was most intriguing was that Kaya FM, now until last year or 2 years ago, they did a similar boat cruise. They also sold the same amount of tickets, but they sold the other way around. Initially, when we did our program, we would sell all the cheap ones, and then you get left with those top-level ones that are quite pricey. Whereas Kaya ones, the top-level ones, go before, and then the cheap ones at the bottom follow later on. It was quite interesting that it just shows you that we're dealing with very different markets at the moment. I want to show you a little clip, and I'm probably going to try, in the interest of time, if you don't mind just playing the clip there, please. I'll show you a little bit of this, and then somewhere in the middle I might just ask the DJ to stop it.
Hi, his name is Pop-Ups. His name is Kumba. Big Bang shopping, yes. But to embark isn't embarking, it's more. Yeah, so embark on this beautiful cruise. And we're going to be away for 4 days, Joe. My phone's off. Kaya Ferry Soul and Rhythms Cruise
Jazz.
I'm sorry, Jazz Cruise. There's gonna be quite two artists there. There's gonna be trumpist, Judith Sipuma, and her nose, like she's playing her nose with her nose. The first thing we did when we got to the cruise was we checked in. Then we went to the bar. Oh. And then we don't remember anything after the bar. What we know is that there was money being here. And yes, the car. Yes.
And then this year we tried for the first time another thing, which was actually to take them skiing. Now this was an interesting one. I mean, we thought we have an audience that actually wants to try some of these things. Let's try skiing. I think in hindsight, we were right and we were wrong. And I'll tell you why they were right and we were wrong. Black people still have the African thing of leaving things till late. 2 weeks before the cruise, guys are from, hey, you want to go on the cruise? Are there still some spaces left? Of course there are spaces left. But you can't get a Schengen visa in 2 weeks. So that was lesson number one, that I think there are certain other logistics that you need to factor into this particular process that just really made it very difficult for us. The other lesson that we learned was, when they got there, they loved it. But black people in cold weather are not quite. I'm sure you'll agree with me that one of the office, particularly your, what do you call it, open plan offices, we call it ambience. So the debate is around ambience. Should it be at 29 degrees or at 22 or at 18? And 22 being a compromise, where the black people are going, So I think let me just show you a little bit of a clip. It's quite a long clip, so I'll try and just show you some of the highlights of that, and then let's see where it takes us. Thank you.
The K.I.T Listener Ski Tour Diary.
Hi, it's Kuba here. K.I.T skiing trip off to the French Alps in France. Chilling here. This is a big joke. We are 1 hour before we leave South Africa. And this is my guy, this is King Beer, this is my guy, this is my guy. So what are you looking forward to? Because when you're from France, man.
It's one of our DJs.
So I'm looking forward to going back home, going down the Alps, enjoying the skiing, spending time with you, Scuba. You're a great guy. I want to learn from you, my brother.
And please, this is a point where we leave him in France.
I can't do too much. I'll be back in South Africa, definitely.
We're in Paris. Are you okay, by the way? Because you've flown over 2 hours now.
The flight was nice, and I sat next to two white crazy people. They don't do like crazy people. Why? So they wanted to talk to me. I don't want to talk, so all of my right there, yeah, in front of me. Not here, Stevie, no. Every movie I want is there.
So you watched DiCaprio's movie, Oscar for?
Dude, yeah. I couldn't watch it properly, but this white lady was like, so what do you do? I don't care what I do, leave me alone.
The time played for over 10 hours in France.
Like overcome,
It's just like overcome. It's just like
this one is big.
Hi guys, we just landed at Geneva, and it's like Joburg. The weather's really nice. Very few clouds inside, the sun is shining very bright, the beach is here. Everybody is upbeat about this. Now we're off to the resort. See you when we get there. Arrived here around 12:30 after a 3-hour bus with cats, Joe, everywhere. And we are in the middle of the snow. And I've never seen so many happy people in my life. Hello. How are you? Yes, you want to come? This is my guy. This is my first guy. We're going to do some skiing things because we got a home ski. Hello. How are you? Can I give you a name? Spomi. Spomi. It means the princess of K.I.T. avocados, there's bananas. It looks like you can. No, it doesn't look like.
So, what we then furthermore did was to really explore the insights that we just were picking up out of the travel situation. And I think if you really look deeply into some of the stuff that we picked up was the notion of novelty is quite a key driver of interest. And I think that's a human factor. It's not peculiar to this market. I think for people who have not traveled, I think it's a good thing for us to begin to highlight that. Relaxation in terms of escape. I think you would have seen when we talk about some of those insights of the various sectors, that to escape is one of the things that we all like to do every now and then. Obviously sightseeing, adventure travel is quite an interesting part that seems to be emerging more and more. Shopping and partying, romantic getaways, but I think just to highlight the fact that novelty actually came out as a dominant factor, and I think being immersed in something new was quite a key thing. Now, travel plans often had core focal points that related to discovering new cultural trends, but importantly, it's really the activities that happen in and around where you are. And gender experiences or gender differences actually create interesting observations. I mean, as I observed with my wife the one time, that she would rather I went to the Louvre than she would go shopping. So shopping was a big part for her at that particular time, particularly for clothes and cosmetics. I don't know how true that is, I'm just reporting this data, so don't use that against me. Males, more often than females, taking partners with them on romantic trips. And those getaways were a priority, and they were focused on relaxation and pampering for both partners. If I can just go back to the boat example. When you speak to the management of the boat company, they told us that nowhere in the world have they ever sold as much alcohol as they sold on that week. I'm just talking about the pampering part, because pampering comes in different forms. So younger participants were more likely to travel with friends of the same sex, either boys or girls, weekend aways other than were also for the older groups. However, the dominant trends was that of taking a partner on the travel trip. Some participants mentioned going on adventure trips with best friends. Here the trips were lengthy in nature and had a more component of a backpacking or roughing it in some instances. Participants frequently traveled to other African countries, listing Ghana, Uganda, Kenya, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe and Nigeria as primary destinations. Sometimes business trips were extended and included dining out when you finished your work, you stay a couple of days over, which is called, I think we have a term now that we're beginning to use for that. What's it called? Pleasure, yes, that's the one. Yeah. And then ideal destinations and trips. I think we spoke a little bit about that, but what came up was the festival in Rio to some extent. Somehow Cuba seems to be quite a romantic getaway that most people want to do. Now we did a little bit of an exercise on spend. I mean, don't hold us to this. This is not that South Africa, but this is really kind of being on a very small sample just to get an idea. The maximum spend was about 30,000 rands, which was probably roughly what you would have paid for that ski holiday with all inclusive. And the minimum or sort of was around 12, 15, which is what you would have given them for that Cape Town International just for argument's sake. But what is interesting that emerges is that they feel comfortable when you have everything included in the trip. There's a sense that I want to know what I'm going to pay, and I've paid, and I'm okay. So don't keep popping up little prices, you have to pay for this, you have to pay for that. On the boat, they all knew that they have to pay for alcohol, and they were ready for it. And boy, they bought expensive. I mean, those whiskeys were flowing. I think I've lost my place. Okay. In terms of bookings, travel bookings and buying insights, we found that a lot of them are now switching on to online, and Groupon is one of those areas where they actually go into. I know that somebody said that you shouldn't believe Groupon in marketing. I'm just observing what the consumer is saying at this point in time. And the Limpopo province came out as a top destination. I don't know why. I had I suppose it has to do with the ZCC church, I'm not sure. And then peers were most relied on as source of information. So in terms of peer-to-peer advice on data about travel, I think that happens to everyone. TripAdvisor is beginning to emerge as quite a strong source of referral. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say on that one. But now I think I'm sort of drawn closer to my conclusion, really, on the inside side. I think our role really is to change that behavior and to create markets for them. And I think it's also really around experiences and packages. But the thing is about affordability and attainability. And I'm using those two words quite loosely. You know, one of the things that I observed, and I'm going to use some personal experiences here, is I was suggesting to my brother who came to Cape Town and he spent a week with their stopfell here last year. I said, let's go to the Kruger. And he says to me, no way, dude. I don't want to be eaten by a lion. and you kind of say to him, no, but there's places, and there's a thinking in their heads that once you are in the Kruger and you get out of the car, so then you're not going to have the problem of that white guy who wanted to kiss the elephant. So yeah, they're not even going to get out of the car. But I mean, the point really was that there is a lot of education and there's a lot of misconceptions about our attractions and our destinations that we want to take them to. So it's important that we have that patience. And in terms of the current economy, I mean, I use this particular slide because in many instances in our environment with Afropolitan, that some of them actually are traveling overseas. But with the rand being what it is, I think suddenly they are now considering domestic travel quite strongly. So there is an opportunity there for us to start really doing some exciting things in that particular space. I think I've touched on a lot of these, but I want to just kind of talk around the engagement part, the part that actually is on the right-hand side of those slides. Is that the packaging of novelty experiences, like the ski trip for the high end, I think is quite an important thing that we need to start doing a lot of those. I think it would be exciting to start saying that when there's something big happening in Cape Town or in KZN or wherever it is, what do you package for that particular segment of the market? And at the bottom, I think the affordability and the attainability is around what sort of formats do you give them to pay? Somebody was talking around, I think it was 350 that you break into small bite-sized chunks. That thinking should not be lost. And we do need to get back into thinking in that particular area because that's where your biggest barrier of travel comes in. It's really around the affordability piece. But it's also around, I've never traveled before. You know, how do I actually get myself into a space where I can actually start considering travel as a proposition. But more than that, it's also around the product offering that we have. I think I was sharing with you earlier on around, we have a travel company a rental company. And I was challenging the guys that if you look at some of the taxi owners, my people, no, I was a taxi driver. I don't have a car. One of the things that I found intriguing is that some of them have got these stopfalls where they, every month, and this is disposable income, they would contribute anything between 10 and 15,000 rands a month into some sort of a fund. I don't have that disposable income right now to put into some sort of a fund. But what is intriguing about that is that they do that so that they can help the other guy buy the taxi, the next taxi. So if there's like 10 or 15 of them, by the time it comes to you've got enough money for you to actually go almost buy your taxi cash. And they just do this thing on a cyclical basis. What if they put in an extra 1,000 rands into that kit, and that actually comes as part of their holiday for the end of the year? These are such easy things for us to do, but it's just that we need to be close to those markets and to get into those spaces. And I think the other thing is just the fear of getting into a flying situation. I mean, my father died before he could fly in an aeroplane, and that's not for lack of trying. But a year after he died, we then forced my mother to fly. The dude's gone, so you don't want to go before you do this thing. So we agreed on a simple plan. And I'm sharing this with you because it actually has got some interesting lessons for me. I said to her, if I went to Durban and I waited for you at the airport. And then you travel with my sister. Because there was a whole group of us that were traveling, so I think it was not going to be affordable for us to all go, like 10 of us in an aeroplane. So we drove down. I got the two of them to get into an aeroplane. So we made sure that when they get into the plane, my sister takes her there, takes her through everything until we get to security, and just tell the security, show this lady where G15 is, or G5 gate, and then they did that. And I made her travel with a small bag. I said, don't take anything that will go into the carousel, because you'll panic when you don't see your bag coming out. So put it up at the top, when you get off, take it, get out. And by the time you open your eyes when you get out, I'll be there. And then we did all of that, and when she got out on the other side, I was there. So effectively what I'm saying to you is that home-to-home treatment is an important part of the journey. I mean, we do it for international tourists. We fetch them, we take them around, we hold them around. I think we need to do the same for this particular market, unfortunately. Am I out of time? So I've got 5 minutes, am I right? Thank you. So I think, yeah, on the barriers of travel, I think we've spoken a bit about that. But what we did on that particular one is that last year we developed a concept which we called holiday swap. And this concept was aimed and intended at speaking to this particular market in terms of just saying to them, how do you begin to travel and what do you do when you're in particular places? And we then created activities or events inside this thing where we stretch them. You know, the novelty idea of trying new things. So I'm going to show you 2 clips. I think let's do the one next to it. No, yeah, that one. I think that's with the skydiving people.
I've always wanted to skydive more than anything. In days of I'm like,
I'm really, really excited, looking forward to it. It's a first for me, so yeah.
I'm like, what is it like? Is it what I think it's going to be? Because he was telling me we're going to be 8,000 feet in the air.
And this was in the Drakensberg. So the plan is to show them that you don't have to go to the Drakensberg and just climb mountains. There's a whole lot of other stuff that you can do while you're there.
It's screaming since we got on the plane. I was just screaming it all in.
Really pushed my body out of the plane. The first 3 seconds, I felt like my heart set.
You don't have time to feel? It's like, oh, swing your legs over, and you're swinging your legs over, and then you're like, boom, got it.
So I think I'll show you the other one, the top left one. I think let's do that, yeah. This is the surfing ladies.
I'm feeling very nervous, extremely nervous. I don't know what lies ahead.
Okay, Dee is a bit nervous. She's still on the shore and Sandy is already in the water.
I'll try it, just to conquer my fears, but I don't think I'll finish it. I'm really, really scared. I'm in the water. I'm thinking of so many different things. I mean, am I going to breathe? Am I going to fall? Am I going to drown? Even though I had a life jacket on, there was so many different things going on in my head because there's waves hitting all the time.
Now, the reason that I'm showing you those 2 clips is really to show you that there are times when we almost have to choreograph these things. That's the unfortunate reality that we face with. I mean, we can't treat that particular market the same way that we respond to travel and tourism. That surfing one was an interesting story. There was a girl from Alex. Alex is, for those Cape Townians, Alex is in Alexander in Johannesburg, which is where I come from. She'd never swam before. And somehow she just took it upon herself that I've got a life jacket, I'll be okay. And then she went on the surfboard. She stood the longest of the lot. Now imagine that sort of experience when somebody who would never swim actually just stands on a surfboard and wins a challenge like that. The second one was in another one of these groups, there was a lady from the Northwest. She'd never seen the sea before. So I tried to get that clip, which I couldn't find for some reason. I think it was in the production stuff that I couldn't get to. But when she arrived in Durban, she kind of stood at just close to Ushaga Marine and looked at all of us and said, wow, I didn't know the sea was this noisy. And it looked smaller on television. we laugh, but I think it's a reality of somebody who's never seen something and has got no concept of what this thing looks like, feels like. And it's like when you take the kid to the sea for the first time. I mean, I saw it with my own child, and the thing was just frightening for them. Until they kind of get used to it and realize that no, there's no harm, and then you have to stop them. They are very similar, so brace yourself. Now, the last, I'm getting to the last couple of slides now. I think in terms of the house, I mean, I've spoken to you about the creating sort of experiences and unique platforms to be able to tell these stories. Last year, or in fact earlier this year, when we did the jazz thing, we then took that group of people to, do we have it here? No, okay. We took them to K.I.T last year, and then this year we took them to Musenberg. There's been a new restaurant that had just opened, but we did it via Chapman's Peak. And then we stopped just above that lovely hotel, Tinswalo. And then when we stopped, there were two buses. And when we stopped, there was a guy who had fresh oysters. There were girls there who had champagne and sushi. And it was just to create an experience for them and just see how they respond. So for me, it was a good piece of research that they paid for. But the response was incredible. I mean, some of them had never had sushi before. Some of them were trying oysters for the first time and fell in love with them. And just the idea of champagne at 11 o'clock to get them pissed before lunchtime was also I think that worked very well for all of us. Now, I spoke to you about the issues around first-time travelers, I think. Let me just kind of highlight a number of points, I think about 3 or 4, which is what we need to focus on. There's such a lot of stuff to share with you. But the first one is that I think we need to move away from dealing with the individuals, or rather dealing with them in one singular group. That's the one part, which has become very difficult when you're dealing with people with different psychographics. But when you say them, we need to also notice that in some instances, we have to sell to them in groups. Those groups could be building societies, could be stokvels, could be whatever it is. And when you do that, make it a home-to-home thing. I mean, that's the second point there. Fetch them at home, take them through the airport situation that they have to fly, make sure that it's all inclusive from a food point of view. And just the hotel also needs to kind of understand that, you know, you can't sort of, I don't know what's the word, I mean, the other day we booked for a group in the Drakensberg, and the group that I was with kept on changing their mind. This one was coming today, was not coming, and then they were coming again, they were not. And you could see that the hotel gets frustrated because they want to kind of get a booking, get it confirmed. This is a market that you're trying to edge into a particular space. So there's also got to be some level of flexibility on our part. And then create interesting experiences for them to go and see, your sightseeing stuff. Choreograph as much as you can. I think that's an important part. So I spoke about the home-to-home, and then on the affordability side, there's a couple of things that one needs to talk about. There's an issue of cost. On the cost side, I think the first part that one needs to kind of recognize that the cost issue is about price, but it's also about price at a point. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. If you charge me 12,000 rands to go to some place, I may not have 12,000 rands, but if you say to me 12,000 rands in December, I might have 2,000 rands a month for the next 6 months. I think we need to move on to those sort of ways of selling. I think when you remember during the apartheid days, when I was struggling to join the struggle, if you went to shops like John Craig in Joburg, I think there was a John Craig in Joburg as well. What you'd find is that people used to lay-by for their shoes. And they would buy that 200 rand pair of shoes and pay 20 rands every month. for the longest time. But every Friday you would go and look at that shoes and say, that's my shoes. I think unfortunately we need to find a way of beginning to create that romance for this particular market, where we create the situation where you pay for your stuff, but somehow create that romance of saying that my holiday is coming. The second part is one that we don't like to talk about, is that the arrival of Airbnb creates an interesting opportunity. I think of beginning to create packages. I think Airbnb in and of itself doesn't provide much, but if you look at how one or two of us, especially you provide this little piece, I provide this little piece, we book the place and then we put it all together, suddenly the price drops. You might even want to throw in an intern chef from some of the hotel schools in the local town or township, and then they cook for those people. Now imagine you've got a group of 20 Stokvel members who have booked 2 or 3 houses, and then they've got this young chef from the local school cooking for them on the weekend. They don't have to worry about food, about cooking, they don't have to worry about all sorts of things. So these are just ideas that we're beginning to throw around as we're trying to make sense of these things. I think on that note, as I draw to a close, and I want to say thank you, I think I want to just use the words of Mr. Muhammad Ali, may his soul rest in peace. He said, impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Impossible is not a declaration, it's a dare. Impossible is potential, impossible is temporary, impossible is nothing. And I think with those few words, I just want to challenge you to say that we don't have all the answers. The road is long ahead of us. But I think we've got the makings of something great that can actually develop the tourism market in South Africa and really get your attractions to be top of mind for a particular market that does not visit them. Before I get off the stage, I just want to thank my colleagues, Judith and Claire. Who's Claire? She's busy again over there. I think they've really been superb in helping put this presentation together. With the limited time that I have, I think this presentation would not have looked anything like what it did. Thank you guys, I really appreciate it.